Hello, everyone, and welcome to our podcast, Control Shift ZW, where we discuss tech related issues in the context of Zimbabwe. Today, we are joined by someone at the intersection of tech communities and artificial intelligence. He's a tech community leader, an AI advocate, and a builder of practical AI solutions focused on inclusion and impact, Mr. Bande. Welcome to our podcast. So maybe before we start, can you please give us and the audience as well a brief introduction of who is Brendan Bande and what does he stand for?
So Brendan T. Bande is a business analyst at Milne State University, and also a tech community builder associated with multiple developer communities like Google Developer Group Sarare, Zindi, Applied Machine Learning Days Africa, and Young AI Leaders Gweru. So basically what I do, especially within the tech community space, is help people understand technology, sort of like help them find their way when it comes to learning or when it comes to when they want to grow within those technological spaces. So basically that is it when it comes to technical communities.
So based on your experience, what does it take to be a tech community leader? I mean, what are the day-to-day basic activities that a tech community leader go through?
So the day-to-day tasks for tech community leaders are different. They're sort of like seasonal. But we find out that as we approach the end of the year, you are mainly involved in participating at tech events, organizing tech events. And then when it comes to the other months, probably besides planning for events, with people from the community who might have maybe questions or might be in need of resources or some connections in whatever they want to be part and parcel. So basically, it's usually you're interacting with the people, helping them get whatever they want, as long as it is within the means for you to be able to reach out to get them. And then time from time, you now have to sort of like organize events so that the people come together. Because the whole idea about having communities is for people to come together, get to know each other, and see how best they can work together to achieve results.
So how important are these tech communities in the Zimbabwean technology space? I mean, what value do they add to students, maybe developers, or even tech enthusiasts?
If I was not to try, I would try not to be biased, but you get to learn more from tech communities than you do from the class, because you find out that yeah, of course, the class they have their way of doing things, and those curriculums change maybe after 3 or 4 years. And in between those spaces, there is a lot of technological advancements, frameworks that are coming through that you don't get a chance to learn in class. But now, when it comes to technical communities, what we do is we just learn what is there, right? And then as we learn, we sort of like try to help someone understand the concepts, sort of like show them how they can build, and then sort of like show them somewhere they can use for reference or something they can compare to, so that they sort of like adopt those emerging technologies faster, and at the same time they sort of like gain confidence with the skills. And so more often than not, you find out that people now start connecting with what they've learned in class. Once they come to our communities and we're showing them like maybe we do 1, 2, and 3, that is when they sort of like, or that theoretical knowledge, that is when it starts to thinking. So it's sort of like a bridge between emerging technology and helping people understand the concept that they learn in class. And even if you are not coming from where you are learning in a structured way, maybe not from a university, some concept that you've seen, we sort of like show you how it applies, and then you take it from there.
So, talking about the tech communities, if you can please help me understand, like, how do you ensure diversity in these tech communities, especially to women and the disabled?
We try to ensure diversity within tech communities one of the best ways that I've seen to work is organizing events that are targeted at a specific type of group. You find out that each and every year, there's always International Women's Day celebration that are mainly targeted towards women. And most of the time, it is women coming together and leading some of these sessions. And as a tech community lead, you are just there to support, usually with your presence, and then you let them do their own thing. And then as you do that, it's sort of like give them the space to air out any concern that they might have, and sort of like give you the information that you need so that whenever you're planning for events that target them, you know, understand that when it comes to dealing with women, when it comes to dealing with girls, when it comes to dealing with maybe underrepresented communities, how best can I sort of like do something that actually connects with what it is that they do? So usually it's mainly about hosting events that are targeted towards them so that at least they understand that they have a place within the space, and then they feel free to air what their consent, and then you know from there how best you can help them.
So interestingly, I have had a chance to work with you during your days at Google Developer Groups. I mean, you are very active in trying to get the students get involved and also to organize events for these students. Since you have moved from GDG, any other tech communities that you are currently working with, and or any other projects that you are working on so that you can get students or any other tech enthusiasts involved?
So due to a career shift, I sort of like now I am based with or based in Guero, which means that I won't really have much time to be in Harare organizing events and doing stuff. But, I'm still involved with the student communities. I still try as much as I can to sort of like rope them in whenever I'm hosting programs, regardless of where they are from. And then currently I'm mainly concerned with young AI leaders, Guero, which is since I'm now based in Guero. And we are aiming at, so first of all, we're aiming at providing AI literacy, which is getting people to know about the tech, especially the AI. And then from there onwards, sort of like start showing them how they can use it in their day-to-day lives, and then maybe integrate it with solutions, especially if we are going to be working with people who are really technical when it comes to software development and related areas.
Yeah. So just to ask, is Zimbabwe even prepared for AI? Maybe as distributors or as consumers, however way it is. Are we prepared as a nation for AI?
That would be a tricky question because if, of course, we're going to start talking about the infrastructure, that is usually where the conversation goes. And in that space, it's a bit of yes and no. Both find out that we have the high performance computing center that is out there. And I think for basic models, that would be enough for if someone really tries to do something with it, you can come up with a model that you can actually put out there. So in terms of infrastructure, we might have to some extent, it's not widely distributed. It's not easily accessible for anyone who might want to tap into the space, but there is some room for someone to access some of these services. But then my major concern is around the foundations of what it means to be not only to be just a consumer in the AI space, but to also be a contributor. Because I think we lack the foundations or the structures for us to be able to position ourselves as contributors within the space. Because we can talk about the data, availability of data, and one might argue that data is not there, but we have companies out there that are collecting data on a day-to-day basis. So it means that we don't have the structures for us to be able to share that data, which means that we won't really go much when it comes to the AI space, as long as we do not have access to some of their data. And then we can talk about maybe we can talk about infrastructure, network, and all that. There is room for people to work around edge AI and offline solutions. And we are not positioning ourselves in a way where we can sort of like try to channel our resources towards that. So as for whether Zimbabwe is ready, I think when it comes to the resource part, partially we are there, but we still need to work on our structures and our foundations so that we can sort of like get all those researchers contributing something to the AI, not just being consumers. Because when it comes to consuming, I'm pretty sure that you are very good at that.
Just a follow-up question. Sorry to take you back a little bit about this inception of AI in the Zimbabwean tech space. I would want to know from your perspective, would you think that artificial intelligence is opening gaps or it is closing gaps? I know people are arguing that AI is taking people's jobs and whatnot. So, in your own perspective, do you think artificial intelligence is opening or closing doors?
That would depend on how AI is being implemented. Because we find out that once someone knows that they can make a flyer using AI, they are quick to sort of like dispose of someone who has been taking care of that role so that they can just use AI just to cut their costs. Which is not what AI was meant for, because AI was meant to augment human skill and intelligence. Under normal circumstances, I would say that of course there are going to be jobs that are going to be lost as thanks to AI, but at the same time there are roles that are opening, and AI is sort of like creating even more opportunities. Both find out that maybe a year ago or 2 years ago there were no roles for prompt engineers.
Yeah.
But right now, there are actually roles that are coming for prompt engineers. And then they also opens room for people to turn into consultancy. Because find out that with that domain expertise that one might have from an industry, they can easily dive into consultancy, special things to AI tools. And with that, they can create more and more jobs around them. So it is a tricky question on whether AI is really making those jobs go away. Because at the same time, it is giving the people the tools to sort of like create their own jobs and even employ other people.
This has got me thinking, right? So let's just say hypothetically, I am a graphics designer or I work in the field of image editing or something of that sort. Would you advise me to improve on my editing skills or just maybe forget about that and focus on AI and improve my prompting so that if maybe I know how to prompt, then I don't really need to know how to use my skill? Would you advise me to continue improving my skills or just to learn AI prompting?
There's sort of like a word that I mentioned before, which is domain expertise. The more that you sort of like understand the process behind how you design your flyers, that is the better that you are at when you are using AI to design flyers. Because you sort of like need to understand the basics, right? For you to be able to prompt AI better. Someone who's never created a flyer, if you just ask them to create a flyer using AI, they will be satisfied with their work. But if you are going to, if it is going to be something that you have to dish out to customers, as a professional, there are moments where you can see that okay, this might be a flyer that it sort of like addresses the purpose for which it was created, but if you're going to be dishing it out there, there is 1, 2, 3, 4 things that are wrong with it. And that is where your domain expertise, your understanding of the field comes into play. So what I would advise is at the same time, as you are learning the prompting, as you are learning the AI, try to understand more about the field that you want to use that AI into. Because anyone can now create a flyer, but it is someone who knows how a good flyer should look like, how a good flyer should be designed like, would definitely be a standout when it comes to sort of designing and delivering to customers. So try to learn both, understand. So deepen your understanding within the domain, and at the same time, you have to embrace AI because it's not an issue whereby you choose one and you have to discard the other. You have to sort of like do both at the same time.
It is so interesting to note that with this prompt engineering, it also poses some problems whereby if you give garbage in, as input, you also expect to get garbage out as output on the code. Maybe if I develop on the code that AI writes. So most of the developers that I know would still argue that you can be a prompt engineer and then you can write code with the AI, but it would also take some time to debug that. So you still have to have knowledge in programming and other related industries for you to work with artificial intelligence. Okay, so my next concern is around ethical issues. I mean, let's assume that you are a developer and you are working with company data and you're putting data into an artificial intelligence model. I mean, how far should we go in giving it data? As far as I believe, artificial intelligence is learning from the data that we are feeding it, and improvements are made based on the data that we give it. So if we are giving company data and other things, how far should we go and how ethical should we be in order for us to use these artificial intelligence products? For instance, you might be a junior developer just joining a company, and then you decide to use artificial intelligence, and then you're putting the whole code base, the company code base, into artificial intelligence. So at the end of the day, that code base again becomes public in the sense that the artificial intelligence will use it to learn and probably deploy it in a different scenario or in a different setup altogether. So how far should we go in terms of ethical issues when we are putting data into artificial intelligence models?
Actually, that is something that has been a burning issue, especially when it comes to when it comes to data and AI, whereby sort of like people, because they now want to use AI to do things faster, maybe to accomplish whatever task they are given, they sort of like upload all the information about the organization without the consent of the organization. And when the organization sort of like starts seeing some of their internal secrets being out there now, because AI, once it trains from the data, the next thing it is going to do is to use that, whatever it got, to generate the next response for another person who might be a competitor. So when it comes to that, I think people need to sort of like be taught about what exactly to put into AI, how exactly to put it, and also organization needs to have some sort of like structures and policies on which tools to use and which tools not to use. Because one interesting approach that I've seen a company take, I once had a friend who works for a company that was based in Canada, and they sort of like they are sort of like virtual workspace where we had to log in and we had no access to any external tools like ChatGPT. It was you just logging into that workspace and then working within that workspace. And when you're done, you just leave that workspace. And they were doing so because they were sort of like trying to protect some of their data because they dealt with a lot of clients and they had a lot of personal information within. So that is one approach that companies can take, but also us as the users, we need to have that sort of like ethical guidelines when it comes to what we load into the AI, because at the end of the day, it is the user who's going to input that. Gemini, Google, ChatGPT are not going to force you to put in things, and your organization sometimes they might not have the capacity to sort of like block some of those platforms. So as the user, you should have that responsibility, like knowing where to stop whenever you're feeding AI some of the data. So those are some of the things that I can talk about when I'm talking about ethical considerations when it comes to data. And then yeah, mainly because when it comes to that, it's mainly about the data. But of course, there are some other things that you can consider, like as a human, there's still also need for you to disclose some of the tools that you used whenever you are coming up with a solution. Because if you are working, let's say, as part of a team, people really need to know that, okay, this section was AI generated, this section was actually done by a human. And because people have failed to disclose that, you can find out that most of the popular open source projects, they're now closing when it comes to taking in submissions from external parties, due to the fact that people will just go to the repository, then ask AI to do a few things, and then AI would mess up the code and no one would be accountable. So they're now saying that, okay, we're just working with a select few individuals that we trust, that we know that are going to be the actual humans putting in the work. So as human disclosure, I think it is something that would come in play. And you can find out that I think it was last week when Linus talked about, the guy behind Linux actually came out and told people that he actually used AI to generate the interface for one of his latest works, where he was saying that, okay, I'm doing this because I understand the process behind what I'm trying to build, but I have no idea about how to use how to build front end. So I use AI for this and this and this and this. And this is the surprising thing is people are starting to sort of like but we're now at a space whereby you cannot stop AI, right? But at the same time, we need to have the structures where people can know that AI works here so that they know if they're going to look into problems, they can start know sort of like debugging, knowing that this part was done by AI. What does the AI usually get wrong? And then maybe that can be a starting point rather than them being in the wild without any idea and didn't disclose that we were using AI to do this.
That is very interesting because right now people wonder if we're even safe with this AI. AI can now generate images where you can't even tell the difference whether it was a real image that was captured or it was just AI generated. And this is very, very interesting. But I also have like a question, although you have touched on it a bit. I just want to know, like, if I am an early developer, what advice or mentorship can you give me as an early developer?
Career developer or someone who's just interested in tech, I think the first thing that I would ask you to do is try to learn as much as you can before you sort of like settle like I want to go down this path. Because you never know what might interest you, what you might be best at. That is the first thing. And then the second thing is you have to be patient with yourself. Of course, there are going to be boot camps that promises you that you're going to be a backend engineer maybe after 2 weeks or so. That is never the case because you find out that most of the stuff that we do as developers when we're trying to solve problems, what makes us produce better solutions is the experience that we've had, and that experience can only be accumulated over time. So just be patient with yourself. It is a long journey, but step by step, you definitely make it there. And then as you go towards that path, try to build as many projects as you can. Those sort of like become reference point for anyone who might be looking into employing your services. So as you build, you also gain the confidence for you to be able to ace your interviews. But there's a difference between someone who's explaining a concept that they simply learned maybe in a YouTube video or in class, and someone who actually tried to implement that concept and knows where its strength or where its weaknesses are. So yeah, those three things, just try to learn as much as you can. Just be patient with yourself and use projects on a journey, just to make sure that those concepts are really protected.
So, in terms of regulations and maybe accountability, I would like to ask that do we have a policy document that we work on with as a country, or do we have some guidelines which leads us or protect us from, any harm or any challenges that we might face when we are using artificial intelligence? For instance, we now using artificial intelligence in so many industries. Songs being generated by artificial intelligence, art or pictures being generated by artificial intelligence. So maybe when it comes to prosecution, maybe when it comes to accountability, do we have a policy that guides us as a country? Or maybe if we don't, do you think we need one whereby we can work with, or certain regulations that we can work with, so that it gives us guidelines on how to use artificial intelligence?
As of now, I'm not really aware of policies that directly prosecute people when it comes to sort of like anything that pertains to AI and what they generate. But usually, most of the things that we generate, they fall in other domains. For example, we were talking about things like generating songs. You find out that, of course, you can generate a song using AI, but that is sort of like a domain where Zimra and those other agencies that have something to do with royalties and music rights come into play. So we found out that, of course, AI might do things, but it is not sort of like isolated. It's things that we integrate into our day-to-day lives. And in the spaces in which they go into, you find out that there are regulations that have to be followed there. So as much as what you generate is a matter of your personal decision and your ethical considerations, what you end up producing might end up getting you prosecuted because it violates other things. For example, I think there was an issue about this guy who was generating AI generated videos.
Yes, yes.
That would attempt to be defamatory by the police.
Yes, I remember that one.
Yeah, you find out that they cannot be prosecuted simply because they inputted something to AI, but the outcome of what they produce is something that is now getting them in hot water.
Okay.
So, like I said, we are not building AI solutions. We are not using AI in isolation. We are building it in things that go out there. And as you put out your whatever it is that you generate using AI, be it your software, be it your songs, be it your media, you can be prosecuted there. For example, if you create if you create a platform and data from that platform leaks, you cannot be prosecuted for using AI, but then the Data Protection Act will definitely.
Before we wrap up, maybe someone who's listening right now is wondering, maybe they are interested in joining some of these communities, or they just want to contribute or donate so that they feel a part of it. Where can people find you? How can they contact you, and also how can they join these communities?
If you The platform that I'm really active on and really available on is LinkedIn. So usually, if you reach out to me via LinkedIn, be it my name on LinkedIn is Brandon T. So if you connect via LinkedIn, there is a high probability that I'll definitely get to see your message. Other platforms, some I barely use, and then some they are overcluttered with message. But LinkedIn is definitely the way where you can really find me and where I can be available.
Thank you, everyone, for staying tuned throughout the whole podcast. And to our wonderful guest, Mr. Bande, thank you very much. This was a very interesting conversation. And to all the viewers, if this episode helped you and inspired you or made you think differently about tech and AI, please make sure you subscribe to Control Shift ZW, because we have got lots and lots more content coming your way. But until next time, it's goodbye for now.